Have you ever heard of a king who saved his kingdom by doing almost nothing? In the long, grand history of ancient Egypt, filled with names like Khufu, Tutankhamun, and Ramesses the Great, there are shadows where entire reigns have been forgotten. Today, we're pulling one of those shadows into the light. We're talking about Senedj, the hidden pharaoh whose quiet rule might have been the very thing that kept Egypt from falling apart. This story begins in a turbulent time, around 2800 BCE, during Egypt's second dynasty. The kingdom was fragile, a land still healing from a major crisis. The previous king, Narmer, had made a drastic decision to split the administration of Egypt in two, dividing the vast country between Upper and Lower Egypt. It was a practical solution to a logistical nightmare, but it created a dangerous precedent. It weakened the central authority of the pharaoh and empowered regional governors and priests. The very idea of a single, unified Egypt, ruled by one divine king, was hanging by a thread. After Narmer, a king named Senedj briefly held the throne, trying to manage this divided realm. But the cracks were already showing. This wasn't the glorious, unified Egypt we imagine with massive pyramids and golden treasures. This was an Egypt on the brink, a kingdom where the north and south were drifting apart, each with its own bureaucracy, its own loyalties, and its own ambitions. The power of the pharaoh was still sacred, but it was being tested daily. Every sunrise brought new challenges to the king's authority. It was into this precarious situation that our mysterious king, Senedj, ascended to the throne. So, who was Senedj? This is where the story gets fascinatingly frustrating. For a king who ruled the most powerful civilization on earth, Senedj is practically a ghost. We have almost no grand monuments dedicated to him, no towering statues, no sprawling temple complexes that shout his name across the millennia. His tomb, the traditional eternal home for a pharaoh, has never been definitively found. Some scholars speculate it might be in Saqqara, the great necropolis near Memphis, but without a clear inscription, it's just educated guesswork. The physical evidence of his reign is incredibly scarce. We have a few scattered inscriptions, little more than whispers from the past. His name appears on some stone vessel fragments and in a few later king lists, like the Turin king list and the Abydos king list. These lists, compiled centuries after his death, are our strongest proof that he even existed. They place him firmly in the second dynasty, a legitimate link in the chain of succession. But they tell us nothing about the man himself, his policies, or the events of his reign. It's like finding a single page from a lost book. You know the book was real, but you have no idea what the story was about. This lack of information is what makes Senedj so mysterious. Why is there so little left? Was his reign so uneventful that there was nothing to record? Or was evidence of his rule deliberately erased or simply lost to the sands of time? Some historians even debate whether he ruled all of Egypt or just the northern part, Lower Egypt, while another king ruled the south. The evidence is so thin that multiple theories can coexist. He remains an enigma, a king defined not by what we know, but by what we don't. And yet, the fact that his name was remembered at all tells us he was important. The question is, why? Even without a single glorious achievement to his name, Senedj's role in Egyptian history was absolutely critical. He was the silent preserver, the quiet steward of the throne. His reign acted as a crucial bridge. He came to power after Senedj and ruled just before the famous King Peribsen, who would make the radical decision to associate himself with the god Seth instead of the traditional Horus. Senedj was the calm between the storms. Think about it. In a period of deep division and uncertainty, his primary job wasn't to conquer new lands or build magnificent temples. His job was simply to hold the line. He had to maintain the very idea of a unified kingship, even if the reality was a fractured administration. By simply existing as pharaoh, by performing the necessary religious rites and keeping the bureaucratic machine running, he kept the concept of a single Egypt alive. He ensured that the throne would pass to a successor, preventing a power vacuum that could have plunged the country into a full-blown civil war. Sometimes the most important thing a leader can do is prevent things from getting worse. Senedj's reign seems to be a perfect example of this. He inherited a divided kingdom and passed it on, still divided, but intact. He didn't fix the fundamental problem, but he didn't let it shatter the kingdom either. He was the caretaker, the king who kept the lights on while the storm raged outside. His legacy isn't written in stone, but in the continuity of the dynasty itself. Without his steady, if unremarkable hand on the tiller, the entire Egyptian state could have capsized. So let's call Senedj what he was, a king without glory. He wasn't a warrior king like Thutmose III, expanding Egypt's borders. He wasn't a revolutionary thinker like Akhenaten, changing the entire religion. And he certainly wasn't a master builder like Khufu, who created wonders of the world. By all traditional metrics of pharaonic greatness, Senedj was a failure. He left no legacy of conquest, innovation, or monumental architecture. And yet, that is precisely why he is so important. His reign provides a vital lesson in history and leadership. Greatness isn't always about grand gestures. Sometimes it's about stability. Senedj's reign ensured three fundamental things. First, stability in a fragile political landscape. He prevented the split between North and South from becoming permanent. Second, continuity of administration. The tax collectors, scribes, and priests kept doing their jobs, which meant the state continued to function. Third, and perhaps most importantly, the preservation of royal tradition. The institution of the pharaoh, the divine link between the gods and the people, survived his reign. He was the ultimate placeholder king, but in the best possible way. He held the kingdom together just long enough for the next phase of its history to begin under Peribsen and later the great unifier Khosakemwy, who would end the Second Dynasty and pave the way for the pyramid-building Old Kingdom. Without the quiet, forgotten reign of Senedj, there might have been no Old Kingdom at all. The chaos might have won. So, why does a forgotten king like Senedj truly matter? He teaches us a powerful lesson. Not all leaders are remembered for what they build. Some are remembered for what they prevent from falling apart. History is shaped just as much by the quiet stabilizers as it is by the loud revolutionaries. The silent kings, the forgotten names, are often the invisible pillars holding up the entire structure. They are the proof that sometimes the greatest act of leadership is simply to endure. Senedj's silence in the historical record speaks volumes. It tells a story not of personal glory, but of selfless service to the crown and to the idea of Egypt itself. The next time you think about the great pharaohs, remember Senedj. Remember the king who did nothing spectacular, and by doing so, may have saved everything. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into ancient history. If you love uncovering the stories of forgotten figures and hidden histories, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel, because sometimes, the most fascinating stories are the ones that were almost lost forever. We'll see you in the next one.